Nathan Wray is a dedicated professional with a passion for making a positive impact on lives of others. He worked tirelessly to create safer communities and to protect vulnerable populations. Nathan's commitment to safeguarding children led him to his current role as the Drug Endangered Child Response Team Coordinator, where he leads a team focused on ensuring the well-being of children affected by substance abuse. Recognizing the urgent need to address the growing concerns of teen vaping, Nathan has taken on the role of Teen Vaping Cessation Specialist. Through his expertise and special interventions, he actively promotes healthy choices and empowers adolescents to overcome the challenges associated with nicotine addiction. Nathan's outstanding efforts in his field for suicide prevention have been widely recognized. He is the proud recipient of the State of Tennessee's Governor's Award for his exceptional work in this critical area. Nathan, we are thankful that you are here tonight to share your experience, strength, and hope, and the floor is yours.
Well, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me. Okay, all right. So I'm not bragging, but I do want to say before we get started that in my county, Roane County, there's about 52,000 residents here. We've had a major vaping issue in our schools, just like every other school in the United States has. And we saw the increase in marijuana use going up because they were using dab pens. Some knew that they were and some didn't know that they were. But we saw an increase in marijuana use here. So we changed the way that we responded when a student was caught with a vaping device, whether it was marijuana, whether it was tobacco. And so we changed the whole school policy, and we follow an in-depth program. It's a 4-tier system. You don't get suspended. You don't go to alternative school. You go to a 4-hour class on a Saturday, and your parents have to go with you. Now, I will say, this year, our vaping and marijuana use is down compared to last year, but in high school. But in middle school, it's been completely eliminated. We've had no students caught with a vaping or a dab pen device this year at all. So we're very proud of that work. We're very excited. And we look forward to seeing if the schools can continue on that trend, and that's what we're hoping for. So my presentation is called Courage to Continue. I will be honest with you, I am not a very courageous person. I don't go on roller coasters. I don't even like to fly on airplanes. But what I've learned throughout my life is that I've had this weird, unexplainable courage to keep going through failure after failure after failure. I have wanted to quit so many times, but I've never allowed myself to do that. I've kept pushing forward and figuring life out as it threw all kinds of different obstacles at me. So I'm sitting in my mom and dad's living room. I'm 12 years old. My dad is sitting on the couch, and this is the same couch that I would fall asleep on watching an evening at the Improv. I wanted to be a comedian so badly when I was a kid, and it never happened for me. One, because I just wasn't funny. I tried to be funny as much as I could be, and I would steal the jokes of the comedians, but I couldn't deliver them in the same way. So my dream of becoming a comedian did not happen. But my dad is sitting on this couch. He's not saying a word, and my mom is sitting next to him, and she keeps saying over and over and over again, "Where did I go wrong? Where did I go wrong? Where did I go wrong?" I had just been caught smoking cigarettes for the first time at 12 years old. I'd been invited to a birthday party, and this girl asked me to go outside and smoke a cigarette with her. And she told me if I did, that she would be my girlfriend. And at 12 years old, I thought, oh man, this is it. I'm going to be the king of the block. I'm going to be the superstar of the world. And we smoked the cigarette. She put it out and she said, "I was just kidding with you." But for me, that was all that it took, was that one time of smoking a cigarette to be addicted to nicotine. Nicotine became my drug of choice for quite a few years, from the age of 12 until the age of 13. My parents had this opportunity. They could have said, "Nathan, nicotine-induced changes to the brain during adolescence can be permanent, but they didn't say that. They could have said, Nathan, nicotine's harm can lead to long-term effects on the ability to make good decisions. They didn't say that. They could have said, Nathan, nicotine leaves teens with an increased risk of addiction to other substances, and they didn't say that. My dad could have even said, Nathan, your grandmother just died from lung cancer from smoking 2 packs a day. You should know better than to even be using this product. They did not even say that. What they did say was, you're grounded for 2 weeks. That was the standard. Whenever I got in trouble, I would be grounded for 2 weeks. So I'm not only a professional speaker, I'm not only the drug endangered children response team coordinator for Roane County, I am a Mechaniqua Brave. I went to middle school and high school in Bunker Hill, Indiana. This is my freshman football picture. I'm the guy kind of sneaking out there on the right-hand side. My brother's in the middle. My dad is on the left. In this picture, and in the picture I showed you of myself before as a young man, I am suffering. I can't tell anyone. I'm angry, and I'm pretending like everything is okay. And I know that even today, I have to be very careful because there's times where I pretend like everything is okay and it's not. But here I am, a freshman in high school, pretending like everything is okay. I was depressed, I was angry, I was happy, I was sad, I was scared, and everybody asked me this question. What is wrong with you, Nathan? I'd get in trouble at school and I'd go to the principal's office and I'd hear, what's wrong with you, Nathan? Why do you act like that? Why do you do that? What's wrong with you, Nathan? I'd go to football practice and I would run the wrong play in football practice and my coach would yell at me and he'd go, what's wrong with you, Nathan? Why don't you get this right? We've done this 100 times. I'd get in my mom and dad's car after practice and they would say, the principal called. What's wrong with you, Nathan? Why do you do this? Why do you act like this? Why do you say these things? And I started to believe that something was actually wrong with me. Like I was some type of defect that really didn't belong in this world. And so I was coping in very negative ways. Nothing was wrong with me. I was your typical average teenager. I was looking for attention, but I had some adverse childhood experiences that I had not dealt with, and I didn't know how to cope with those things. Now, an adverse childhood experience is anything that's potentially traumatic to a child that happens to a child before the age of 18. I had 4 adverse childhood experiences that I'm going to talk about today. There are more that I had, and there's one in particular that I won't talk about because I'm still trying to cope with that situation that happened in my life. So, Aubrey, I looked up Texas. In Texas, over 19% of children have experienced 2 or more adverse childhood experiences before their 18th birthday. Now, that can be physical abuse, mental illness in the home, an incarcerated relative, emotional abuse, a mother or a father treated violently, or substance misuse in the home. It could be being bullied. It could be multiple moves in a year. It could be a loss of a loved one. It could be all these different things that's potentially traumatic to a child. So adults who have experienced 4 or more adverse childhood experiences are 38 times more likely to die by suicide, 11 times more likely to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and 2 times more likely to have cancer, heart disease, or a stroke. I did not know how to self-regulate. This is how I self-regulated. At 12, I started smoking cigarettes. At 13, I was so tired of my mom and dad asking me, what's wrong with you, Nathan? That I asked this guy that I played football with, he had a driver's license, if he would take me home after school. I got into his car, and on the way home, he said, hey, you smoke, right? And I said, yeah. And I started to pull my cigarettes out of my pocket. And I got my cigarettes out and I was pulling a cigarette out of the pack. And he said, no, I'm talking about weed. You smoke weed, right? And in my brain, the answer was, well, Nathan, cigarettes aren't harming you right now. You've had no effects of cigarette smoking. So what's marijuana going to do? That's not going to affect you at all. So it's really no big deal. So I looked at my friend and I said, yeah, I smoke weed. And that was the first time that I ever smoked marijuana. Marijuana became my addiction. I ended up quitting football. I ended up quitting basketball, and all of my grades began to drop. I lost relationships. I pushed family away. Everything in my life became about marijuana. So at 14 years old, I get invited to a barn party. Now in Bunker Hill, Indiana, there's two things. There's barns and there's corn. That's about all there is in Indiana. And so you have parties in the barn. And so I was invited to a barn party by a couple of guys, and I went and I got drunk and I got high and I came home, and I walked in the door. And of course, my mom and dad said, "What's wrong with you, Nathan? Why do you act like this? Why do you do this? Why do you behave like this? You're grounded for 2 weeks." They had every opportunity to tell me about the dangers of not only marijuana, but the dangers of alcohol. They had every opportunity to tell me that marijuana and alcohol were responsible for um, damaging the part of my brain that helps with attention, learning, and memory. All the core things that I needed at school, but they didn't tell me that. Now I have great parents. They just didn't know how to have that conversation. So they grounded me for 2 weeks. The next week, my buddies call me and they say, "Hey, we're going to the barn party. Do you want to go?" And I said, "No, I can't. I'm grounded." That was November 11th, 1993. I remember that day like it was yesterday. November 11th, 1993, my friends go to a barn party and they're coming home. Now in Indiana, it's snowing in November, and it was snowing that night. They were on their way home, and a state trooper got behind them and turned its lights on, and they were drunk. Now, if you remember, I told you that cigarettes, nicotine affects the part of the brain responsible for good decision making, but so does marijuana and so does alcohol. And they made a very bad decision that night. They tried to outrun the state trooper. They lost control of their car, and they were both killed in that accident. At 14 years old, I really lost the only friends that I had. So at 14, you would think, well, Nathan, this accident should have changed the way that you behaved. It should have changed your outlook on some of the drugs and some of the alcohol that you were using. But to be honest with you, it didn't. I started experimenting with anything that you would put in front of me. I didn't want to feel anymore. I didn't want to be happy. I didn't want to be sad. I didn't want to be angry. I didn't want to be scared. I just didn't want to feel at all. And so at 15 years old, it did not matter what you put in front of me. I was going to try it because I just did not want to feel anything. And this is how I self-regulated through high school. My senior year of high school, this is my senior picture. I tell students all the time, don't be jealous. You can't recreate this greatness. So I'm my senior year, I'm in basic math class because I can't pass algebra. I can't pass geometry. And so I'm put into a basic math class and I'm told, if you pass the basic math class, we'll let you graduate. But that's all that you have to do is pass basic math. I did not care. I didn't care. I didn't try. I didn't put any effort. I barely even went to class. 2 weeks before graduation, our counselor pulls me to the side and says, "Nathan, you're not passing basic math. If you don't pass, you're not walking across the stage. There's no graduation party. There's no cap and gown. You're just not doing graduation." And I said, "Cool, no problem at all." And I went to the bathroom and I got high and I smoked a cigarette. I wasn't going to feel anything. 1 week before graduation, the principal comes to basic math class and says, "Nathan, I need you to grab your things and come to my office." And I thought, oh, they're going to tell me that I passed in the office. Like, that's how delusional my mind was at that time. I thought they're going to take me to the office and there's going to be a surprise party and they're going to tell me, Nathan, you passed basic math class. So I grab my stuff and I go to the office, and the principal says, I need you to turn in all of your textbooks. I need you to go to your locker and clean it out because you're leaving today. And I cleaned everything out. I did everything he asked me to do. And he walked me to the front door of the school and he opened it and he said, Nathan, please don't come back here. You've caused too much trouble and you've been too much of a problem. Please don't come back here. Now, this is how funny the world works, because I remember looking at him and saying, I will never step foot in another school again. Well, I was wrong, because it wasn't but a couple of months that I was going to go to summer school so I could get a diploma. But I spend just about every single day in a school speaking to students about the dangers of tobacco, alcohol, and marijuana. And so that whole I'm not going to be back in another school, it didn't work out for me. So I go home and my parents have had enough. I've been kicked out of school, basically. My parents have had enough, so they put me in a car. My dad packs a bag and they drive me to a pastor's house. My dad rings the pastor's doorbell, sets the bag down on the ground, and when the pastor opens the door, my dad says, he's your problem now, and leaves. And I remember looking at that pastor thinking, I'm going to make your life as hard as I possibly can, because I already know that I'm a problem. That's how I felt. I knew that I was a problem, and I knew that I could make his life very, very hard. And I tried very hard. After my parents dropped me off, my dad got a new job, and they actually moved out of Indiana. They moved to Phoenix, Arizona, and I stayed in Indiana. A friend of mine came to my house one day and he said, Nathan, what are you going to do? And I go, I don't know. I guess I'm just going to get a job. And he said, no, Nathan, you've got to graduate. Like, you got to get your diploma. You're not going to get a good job without a diploma. And I said, I don't know, man. I don't really care. Plus, I can't go back to the school. They told me not to come back. So my friend, in his infinite wisdom, drove me to a town that was right next to us, and had me sign up for summer school in that town. I couldn't have asked for a better friend. The only reason I have a high school diploma today is because of him. We were great friends. I went to summer school. He took me every day, dropped me off, picked me up, and I passed summer school. I passed basic math in summer school, and I got my high school diploma. But the thing about addiction is some people make it out and some people don't. After many years of being gone from Indiana and working in the job that I work in now, one day it just popped into my mind. I wonder what he's doing now. And so I Googled his name and I found his obituary. And I really was shocked. I don't know why I was shocked, but I was shocked. And his obituary had a list of family names. And so I started to reach out to family members, and one of his daughters reached out to me. And I was telling her about what her dad had done for me with high school, how he took me to summer school and he picked me up and he dropped me off. And he was the only reason I got my high school diploma. And she said, this is so weird. She said, because I was thinking about quitting college. And I feel like my dad is kind of speaking through you to tell me to keep going. He was such a great friend, but he actually died of a fentanyl overdose quite a few years ago. And I had no idea. And that's the thing about addiction, is some people make it out, and some people don't. I got done with summer school and I left Indiana as soon as I could. I actually begged my mom and dad if I could come to Phoenix, Arizona, and live with them. And I told them that I would be better and I would do better and I would have this better life. And they believed me. And I wasn't interested in any of that. I went to Arizona. I spiraled further out of control and I pushed them farther and farther away. One night I was at a gas station at 3 a.m. and I called my dad and I said, Dad, I'm in trouble. I need you to come pick me up. And his response was, what's wrong with you, Nathan? It's 3 a.m. And I said, Dad, I don't want to talk about it right now, but can you please come pick me up? I'm in trouble. I just need some help. And he came and he picked me up. It took about 30 minutes for him to get there. And on the ride home, it was like sitting on that couch at 12 years old. He did not say a word to me at all. We got back to the house and I went to my room and I shut the door. And as soon as I shut the door, he was banging on the door. And I opened up the door, and I should have been someone who displayed a insanely amount of gratitude because of what he had just done. But my response to him banging on the door was opening up the door as fast as I could and saying, "What? What do you want?" And he said, "Do you want a way out of this? The trouble that you're in, do you want a way out of it?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't know. I'll think about it, Dad." And he said, "Well, if you want a way out of it, me and your mom are moving to Nashville, Tennessee. If you want to go with us, you can get a fresh start there." And I said, I'll think about it. I don't know. And I shut the door. And it felt like I had been in my room for like 30 minutes. And it had only been like 3. But I made the decision. I was going. I was leaving Arizona and I was going to go to Nashville because, fresh start. I'm going to be a whole new person. I'm going to be I have a whole new attitude. Things are going to be so much better for me. But I still didn't know how to regulate any of my emotions, my thoughts, or my actions. I had no idea. So I moved to Tennessee. I still have no self-regulation skills. I don't know how to manage emotions. I don't know how to manage my thoughts, and I don't know how to manage my actions. But something changed in Arizona. My dad got me a really good job at Southwest Airlines. My mom is sitting right behind me in this picture. She was so proud because all of her boys worked for Southwest Airlines. My dad worked there. I worked there. My brother worked there. I was a baggage handler. I'm pretty sure everybody knows what a baggage handler is, but if you don't, we're responsible for losing your bags, and we're really darn good at it. I didn't say I was a good baggage handler. I just said I was a baggage handler. But I'm in Nashville, Tennessee. I have a good job now. I'm really trying to forgive myself. That was one of the things that I really needed to do, but I didn't know how to do it. And I want to say sorry to the people that I've hurt, including the family members that are in this picture with me. But I still can't shake off the drugs and the alcohol. At work, I had met the love of my life, and we started dating. And the thing with dating is you can hide what you're doing, but when you get married, you can't hide it any longer. And so we got married a year after dating, and she realized really quickly that I had a problem with marijuana. Alcohol wasn't really my drug of choice. I would use it when I needed to, but marijuana was the hardest thing for me to ever quit using, even above nicotine. But she realized really quickly that I had a problem with marijuana. We ended up having a son. When my son was 3 months old, I got off work one night. I went to a bar, and then I went to a friend's house. I got high, and I came home. And when I got home, it's about 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning. I got home, and my wife met me at the door. And she said, "Nathan, you've got to make a decision. You've got to choose us, or you have to choose a lifestyle that you're living that doesn't include us." Now, nicotine, marijuana, and alcohol harm the part of the brain that's responsible for making good decisions. And I looked at her and I said, "No problem." And I walked to our bedroom and I packed a suitcase and I left. I walked out of their lives. I called a friend and I said, "I need a place to stay." And he said, "You can stay in my garage." And I lived in a garage for 9 months, getting high every single day because I didn't know how to regulate my emotions. I didn't know how to regulate my thoughts, and I didn't know how to regulate my actions. 9 months, my wife would call me and she would say, "Would you please come see your son?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I'll be there in a few minutes." And I wouldn't go. She'd call and she'd say, "Would you please come and see your son?" And I'd say, "Yeah, I'll be there in a few minutes." And I wouldn't go. And one time she called me and she said, "You don't have to look at me. You don't have to talk to me. I won't even be in the same room with you. But please come see your son. He needs his dad." And I said, "I'll be there in a few minutes." And I didn't go. After 9 months of that, back and forth, I woke up one day in the garage and I just looked around and took inventory of my life. Spare tire in the corner. I was sleeping on a brown couch that was white at one time. It was just so dirty from being in the garage and someone smoking weed on it every day. It was hot. I just wasn't happy. And I picked up the phone and I couldn't call my dad because he wasn't talking to me anymore. Um, and so I knew I could call my wife, but I really didn't expect that she would answer. But I dialed her number anyways. And this was back when you picked up a phone to call somebody, like you couldn't just, you had to pick it up off the receiver. So I called my wife and I thought she's not going to answer and I'm going to have to leave a message. And on the first ring, she answered the phone. And before she could even say hello, I said, I want to come home. And she said, Nathan, I've got divorce papers ready and I just don't know that this is going to work. And for the first time in my life, I meant what I said, but I said, I'll do whatever it takes. I want to be a dad and I want to be a husband. And so whatever you want me to do, I will do it. So she gave me this big, long list of stuff that I had to do, go to meetings. I had to go to counseling. I had to go to therapy. I had to repair the relationship with my mom and dad. And if I did this big, long list of things, then I could come home. And I didn't know how to approach the list. I had no idea how to even accomplish any of that. And so after a couple of days had gone by, I called my dad and I had to leave a message for him. And I said, I know you don't want to talk to me, but if you'll call me back, I need some help, but it's for good stuff. It's not for bad stuff. And my dad called me back a day later and I said, Dad, I'm willing to do whatever it takes on this list so I can get my family back and I can be a dad and a husband. And for the first time in my life, my dad didn't say, what's wrong with you, Nathan? My dad actually said, what happened, Nathan? How did we get here? And that was such an impactful question for me. And it's such an impactful question for any parent to ask their children in a time of distress and a time of despair, what happened? How did we get here? Let's talk about that first. That question changed my life because I poured everything out to my dad of everything that I had ever felt and never wanted to feel. And so my life started to change in that moment. So I went through about 90 days of going to meetings, of having a sponsor, of going to therapy, of going to counseling. And I checked every single box on that list that my wife asked me to check off. My dad helped me every single day. If you are a parent and you have a child struggling with substance abuse disorder, walk with them. You don't have to give them anything. You don't have to provide them anything except for love. I'm telling you, my dad's response with love is what kept me going on the hardest days of my life. So I called my wife when I got done with the list and I said, the list is done and I have all the proof. I can prove it to you. Can I come home? And she said, yes, you can come home, but you have to sleep in the spare bedroom. Our marriage still had to be repaired. I accomplished some things, but I still had to go to marriage counseling with my wife, and I still had to go to parenting classes for my son. There were a lot of things that needed to be repaired, but my wife putting her foot down and not enabling me any longer is the reason that I get to sit here and share my story with you today. That's my son when he was like 5 years old. He wanted to be a cowboy. Yeah. So what was wrong with me? I was depressed. I was angry. I was happy. I was sad. I was scared. Nothing was wrong with me. I was bullied at a young age for a birth defect. I was born with a underdeveloped scalp, which means I was bald from birth until third grade. Went to school being made fun of every single day, and I had no friends. In third grade, I was going home crying every day, and my parents got me plastic surgery. And a doctor made it to where I would have hair, but only to a certain point in my head. And so I actually have a cross or an X in the back of my head. And when I went back to school, the bullying continued because I had the cross or the X in the back of my head. My grandmother was my best friend, kindergarten through third grade. After I had my surgery, she suddenly passed away, and I didn't have my friend anymore. And I didn't know how to deal with that. I didn't know how to cope with that. I didn't know how to regulate my emotions. And so I shut everything down. I had moved 5 different times before I ever got to Indiana, 5 times in 1 year. And so every time I tried to make a friend, I lost a friend. And I tried to make a friend and I lost a friend. My dad had a really cool job in the United States Air Force. My dad was actually the crew chief of Air Force One for 20 years, but he worked out of town all the time, and I hated him for it. I didn't realize that he was just providing for his family and doing what he had to do. I was mad because my dad wasn't around, and my mom raised me. I was raised basically in a single parent household, even though they've been married and they're still married today. That's what it was for me growing up. My dad was never home, but he was providing for us, and I had no clue of what that looked like at that age. So here's what I wish I knew in middle school. The rational part of a teen's brain isn't fully developed and won't be until the age of 25. I had no idea the damage that I was doing to my brain by using marijuana, by using nicotine, by using alcohol. I had no clue what that was doing to my brain and how it was slowing down my brain development. I wish I'd have known about the chemicals in tobacco products and the chemicals in marijuana. I wish I'd have known about that back then. Now, back then, I don't think there were as many chemicals in marijuana as there are today, but there were still dangerous chemicals in those products. Chemicals like acetone, arsenic, and lead, and many others. These are just a few dangerous chemicals that are being entered into our teenagers' bodies today through the use of vaping devices, whether they are for nicotine or whether they are for marijuana. They are getting dangerous chemicals into their body through the use of vape devices. I wish I'd have known the 5 R's of self-regulation. These would have helped me so much, and we're going to go through, but I'm not going to go through every single one. Reframing. If someone would have taught me to consider the situations that I was in from various angles, it would have probably changed the way that I responded to adversity. If somebody would have taken the time to genuinely understand that my behavior was caused by an event, it wasn't because I just wanted to be a jerk. It wasn't because I wanted to be a bad kid. I was trying to deal with some events that had happened in my life, and I didn't know how to do it. There's physical, emotional, cognitive, social, pro-social, different types of stress. I had no idea how to manage those things. But it was so important for someone to recognize, and for me to recognize, that the different types of stress played a different role in how I responded and how I acted daily. Reduce. I wish I'd have known that that I could reduce my stress by using coping strategies. And I wish that I could have reflected on my attitude and how I could calm down in those very stressful, overwhelming moments. And then I would have responded in the right way if I would have had coping skills, positive coping skills back then. But a note about teens who suffered trauma: self-regulation is likely more challenging for teens who experienced trauma. And that's because the parts of their brain the parts of their brain that regulate emotions have to work overtime to process this trauma on top of the daily stresses that everyone encounters. So they're working double time on top of what someone who has not experienced a lot of trauma is working. But self-regulation is possible, and I want to show you how. I coach students just about every day. But I want to tell you about T first. I'm not going to use their real names. T had been caught vaping and dabbing several times, was on probation, mishandling their trauma, and the stepmom was at the end of her rope. T could not quit. His stepmom entered the program herself because she vaped, to support not only herself, but to support T. T was still vaping after 6 weeks of being in this 10-week program. So I asked the stepmom to not attend the next 2 sessions. In the next 2 sessions, T was actually able to share the trauma that he had experienced and recognized that he was using vaping and dab pens to cope with the stress and the anxiety that he was feeling because of the trauma that he had experienced. So instead of teaching him how to quit vaping and dabbing, I taught him the self-regulation skills. And at week 8, T was able to put down the vape and the dab pen and is still vape free and dab free today. I got to coach a young man named Kay. Kay's mom called at her final straw. Kay had some major anger issues, and she called about that. She said, I don't understand. He's so moody, and I don't get it. He's always angry and he's upset. And I said, I bet you he has a vape in his room. And she said, no, he doesn't do things like that. Well, she not only found a vape, she found a dab pen as well. Kay's grades had dropped. But the mom blamed a girlfriend initially. She said, it's the girlfriend that's causing all this. It's not anything that my son is doing. But she finally discovered the vapes and the dab pens in his rooms. And then she called the next day and we talked and we got Kay into the program. So Kay entered the 10-week program, wanted to quit vaping, wasn't sure about the program at first. At the very first meeting, we talked about trauma. I had learned from T. And so at the very first meeting, we talked about trauma. We started to teach the self-regulation skills. And at the 5th week, Kay quit vaping, but Kay relapsed. And so when Kay relapsed, Kay called me right away and we went back to the self-regulation skills. And Kay is doing well today. Kay is vape free and dab free, is finishing up trade school and was hired for his dream job. B, excessive vape use, issues at home, grades declined. His mom actually brought him to this office and dragged him in here and did what my dad almost did in a sense and said, he's your problem now. And I was like, oh, I know what to do. I know what to do. And so B didn't start this cessation program for 3 weeks. We spent the first 3 weeks unpacking B's trauma, and that made all the difference. We taught self-regulation. We implemented self-regulation techniques. B quit vaping 2 weeks into the cessation program. 2 weeks. Everybody says it's impossible to quit. It's so hard to quit. It is not. I promise you, it is not. If we teach self-regulation and uncover the trauma, we can help students recover. B is still in the coaching program, just got his GED and has entered the workforce, and mom cannot believe it. She's blown away. She really thought there was no hope for B. H is probably my most challenging so far. She was caught with over 20 vapes at school. And a few dab pens. She's struggling with her relationships. She has trauma. Her grades have slipped. She was attending an out-of-district school. And so she was actually kicked out of that out-of-district school and told that she had to go to her school that she was zoned for, but she wanted to go back to her out-of-district school. So I started coaching H over the summer. And she's still in the coaching process. She's not willing to unpack trauma right now, but she has quit vaping and she has quit marijuana use. She's working part-time and she's really trying really hard to find the right path in her life. I will tell you that she got to go back to her school that she's not zoned to go to because she's in this coaching program. And so my thought here and my belief here is if you want to break the cycle of substance misuse disorder, you've got to treat the trauma being buried under every bad behavior. There's trauma there. Whether people recognize it or not, there's some sort of traumatic experience that has happened. So good experiences heal trauma. So these are the 7 experiences that kids say that they want to happen in their lives that are positive childhood experiences. We have adverse childhood experiences. These are the 7 when students were asked, these were their top responses. They want to have the ability to talk with family about their problems. They wanted to feel that that the family understood them during difficult times. They wanted to enjoy and participation in community and traditions. They wanted to feel a belonging in high school. They wanted to feel being supported by friends, and having at least 2 non-parents who genuinely cared about them was important to them. They considered that a positive experience in their life. And they wanted to feel safe and protected by their guardians at home. So this picture, I share this picture because I told you earlier that I was asked to never come back to my high school again. 2 years ago, a principal called me and said, I'd like to book you to come speak at my high school. And I said, oh, great, I'd love to. What's the name of your school? And he said, Mechanical High School. And I laughed and I said, that's the school I'm not supposed to ever go back to. And he goes, you want to tell me why? You want to tell me more about it? And I said, no, it's a long story. And so we talked about my story, and this was like my redemption moment for me. I was getting to go back to my high school and talk um, to students who have parents that I went to high school with. And I got to tell them about my life, and I got to tell them that they didn't have to make the same choices that I made. And the funny thing was, after this, they all came up to me and said, was my mom at that party? Was my dad at that party? Like they all wanted to know if their parents had done bad things too, which is, it was just funny to me. So this picture, I think this is the picture I used for my headshot. This is in Atlanta. I went to a speaking contest called the Great American Speak Off. And I'm gonna tell you this really short story. So you go to the contest, you speak in front of judges, and they decide if you go to the semifinals or not. And there were 26,000 people that entered into this contest, and I just went in thinking, if I belong in the room, I belong in the room. If I don't, I don't. So I go to the competition and I go in front of the judges and I don't make it, but I want to stick around. I want to stick around to see all the other contestants go and share their stories. And so I stayed. And throughout the whole day, the people that didn't make it, they left. They were done. At the end of the day, the judges said, well, we didn't tell you. If you stuck around and you didn't make it, there's a second chance round. And I thought, cool, I'm going to nail the second chance round. And I did. I got a second chance and I got to the semifinals, and I ended up in the top 150 out of 26,000 speakers in America. I tell you that story because I got a second chance. I got a second chance at my life. I got a second chance at speaking in that contest, but there are a lot of students who need second chances. Some of your own kids need second chances. They need third chances. They need four chances. I'm here to tell you, don't give up on them. If it's not working, keep pushing forward. Keep finding that courage to continue and facing that battle of getting them into treatment every single day. My favorite quote is, success is not final, failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. Winston Churchill said that, and that sums up my life. Success is not final. Whenever I reach a pinnacle of success, I look for the next thing. I want to go to whatever is next. I want to keep going and keep pushing. And I was telling Abby earlier, in 2020, my family was just coming out of poverty. We've lived in a house with no water and no electricity in the 2016, and we've lived in poverty. and I keep pushing forward. We just keep going and going and going. Success is not final. There's always another thing that you can do. There's always another level to go up to. Failure is not fatal. Failure is not fatal. I have failed a million times and I'm still here. I'm still moving. I'm still going. And I refuse to quit because I have the courage to continue. And I know everybody has that courage built in. And in the most difficult times of our lives, that is where we choose to have that courage and keep pushing forward. I will say thank you for having me, Aubrey. Um, I know most of you that are on this call probably already know you're doing amazing work. We're very thankful for you. And I have downloaded several of your resources. So if you don't know, you can go to everybrainmatters.org and download resources there from Aubrey's website. And thank you, Aubrey, for having me. And I've just really enjoyed it.
Well, thank you, Nathan. I was going to ask you one more question if you have
Yeah,
time. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
I really, really enjoyed your presentation. Very impactful, telling your personal story, and you didn't call it shame. When your parents said what is wrong with you, but I'm so glad you made an emphasis of that instead of saying, how can I help you? What happened to have result in this reaction or this behavior. And it's a beautiful thing, the recovery world, how you changed and your family changed and you're out of that shame cycle. And it's so important because that's just such a sign of healing, and because when this happened with my family, there was no like parenting classes, like when your kids are going into like the adolescence period, what the culture's like, what's on the scene. And if your child does start using marijuana or does some kind of behavior, what is an appropriate response, because old school parenting was effective maybe for that time, but now now it's changed. It's a different culture, it's a different world, and now we know better, so we should do better. So in Tennessee there, or maybe even nationwide, do you have any resources on parenting classes for families that are just coming up to that adolescent period?
We have an organization here. It's part of the state, but it's called System of Care Across Tennessee, SOCAT. And they do an amazing job of helping with that. They are a really great resource. And so if you can look up SOCAT, we also have through the state of Tennessee, Building Strong Brains. And Building Strong Brains has really helped us understand adverse childhood experiences. And Tennessee is doing a lot of great research on positive childhood experiences. And one of the things that we found out is if a child is at a traumatic experience, a fire, if there's domestic violence in the home, if there's a first responder who does any type of intervention in that moment, that it reduces the child's stress and anxiety and makes that traumatic experience a little bit more bearable for them to where it doesn't affect them as much as it would without any intervention or action. And so it's really interesting to see the work that Tennessee is doing on positive childhood experiences. The other thing that we're talking about here is it's called Handle with Care. And I don't know if Texas has anything like this or if Iowa has anything like this, or if even New York has anything like this. But Handle with Care is if a student is found at a traumatic experience, like I said earlier, like a fire or domestic violence, the officer on the scene identifies that child, or the fire department identifies that child, and scans a QR code with their phone and sends a notification to the schools in that moment that says Handle with Care. That's all that it says. It doesn't say Johnny had a fire last night or Johnny's mom and dad got into a fight. It just says Handle Johnny with Care. all of the teachers that Johnny goes to that day will be alerted that Johnny is to be handled with care. So if he shows behavior problems, Johnny can be given some intervention services instead of punished. And so what we're finding is that a lot of kids that have those behaviors because of adverse childhood experiences, they're being punished. They're not given intervention services. And so Handle with Care is actually going to be implemented in Roane County in my county, October 17th of this month. Every first responder will be here in my office, and the schools will be here, and the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation will be here. And we'll be putting that plan together on how to implement it in our schools. So Handle with Care is another great resource. And the last one I'll say is the National Alliance for Drug Endangered Children. That is a really great resource to have. So, yep.
I love that.
And I forgot to tell you guys the best thing. So here's the best thing. My son, he was born with autism, and he works full time. He has a wonderful job. We have 3 more children. Me and my wife have 3 more children. Our twins graduate high school this year, and our 15-year-old just got her permit. So if anybody knows a good insurance agent that can lower my insurance, let me know. But I'm a proud dad, and I have a wonderful family, and I'm very thankful for it. So
that's beautiful, Nathan. And I will just say that I'm so sorry to give you this news, but the insurance rates just keep going up. She's only 15. When she's 19 or 20, you will feel like you're paying a mortgage payment every time you pay that car insurance bill. So
at least he's not a boy.
Yeah, that's true, because it's worse for the boys. Yeah.
That's how I feel now, because the 2 that are getting ready to graduate, their insurance is high, and the 15-year-old, hers is high, and I told my wife, I said, they need jobs. Like they just need to get out and get jobs.
Yep. You get to that point, it's like you got to pay for this kid. Yep. Oh, that's such good news, and I just thank you from the bottom of my heart, Nathan, for sharing and giving us this great word of hope. Really impactful. I'm sure your wife making that decision that day of saying you can either choose this or choose that, and then that waiting period when you weren't necessarily choosing probably what she wanted, holding her ground like that's not easy. And I'm so glad you guys are back together and the family has healed. We hear so many stories where it doesn't happen that way. So we are so grateful that you came here tonight. I did not know that about your story. So thank you for that.
I'm glad she took me back too. I'd be a mess if she wouldn't have. 21 years. We've been married 21 years.
Wow, that's incredible. Congratulations.
And now everything in life is an opportunity, even on the hardest days. I look at it as, if I've gotten through all of that, I can get through this. And what steps do I need to take to get there? Life is an opportunity, and I'm thankful that I get to take that opportunity every day.